Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this next thematic session on the next solar frontier: circularity, resilience, and responsibility. This discussion is part of the parallel tracks happening alongside the 25th edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit. I am Apurva Singh. I am a research associate at the Energy and Resources Institute, and I will be your MC for this session. The thematic track today will focus on how we can shift the solar growth from a linear model to a more circular system, including what are the most critical policy and standard gaps today. We will also focus on how battery traceability can be operationalized at scale and who is responsible for solar and battery waste. Before we begin, there is a brief safety announcement. We are currently in the Jehangir Hall 1 at the Taj Palace, New Delhi. This hall has one entry and one exit door. May I kindly request you all to note the nearest emergency exit in this hall. All our hotel associates have been trained to handle emergencies. Thank you. Today's session brings together leading experts and practitioners to explore key challenges, opportunities, and practical pathway forward in this domain. We will now begin the session by a welcome address by Dr. Sunil Pandey, Director, Circular Economy and Waste Management at TELI. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Purva, and a very good afternoon to you all. On behalf of ISA, CES, and TERI, we welcome you here on this very important issue of addressing circularity and resilience in solar domain, so solar ecosystem. We know that it's a critical pillar when we look at our renewable energy portfolio. But there are several geopolitical issues also looking at our own recycling infrastructure. At this point of time, though, there's not much pressure in terms of solar waste being generated in the country, but at some point of time, say in a decade or so, we would have that pressure as well. And we need to begin early. We need to see that whatever precious land we have for waste management doesn't get occupied by exhausted or end-of-life solar panels and also storage batteries. And we should have kind of, as a result, circularity in the very early stage to be built in the whole solar ecosystem management. So, and that is that's the reason why we are here to discuss that. So, on behalf of ISS, and TERI, I welcome you all again and look forward to fruitful session. And hand it over to Apurva back. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now move on to the panel discussion, where our distinguished speakers will delve deeper into the key themes and engage in a dynamic exchange of perspectives. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Gurleen Kaur, lead for the program on solar PV and battery waste management at ISA. She is a technocrat, passionate about using technology to create impactful, sustainable solutions for the future. With that, may I invite Dr. Kaur to please lead the discussion.
Thank you, Apurva. And a very welcome to all of you on behalf of ISA, TERI, and CES. So, today we are here to discuss the next solar frontier, and the three themes that we have chosen today are circularity, resilience, and responsibility. So, solar needs no introduction right now because more than 2 terawatts of solar PV capacity has been installed globally, and 43% has been deployed across ISA member countries as well. And this is a historic success. So the question before us is no longer whether solar can scale, but the question right now is whether it can scale responsibly, resiliently, and circularly. So through Program 8 on solar PV and battery waste management and the launch of Sunrise, the Solar Upcycling Network for Recycling Innovation and Stakeholder Engagement, ISA is moving from dialogue to implementation. So today we also mark an important milestone where we will be sharing the draft of battery recycling guidelines for ISA member countries later in the session. So this, once again, this session is not about managing waste, but this session is about shaping the next solar frontier. So before I move further, I would like to invite my esteemed panelists for this session. So first, Ms. Suman Chandra, Director, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, New Delhi, India. Please put a huge round of applause for all our panelists. Dr. Praveen Kumar, Senior Program Associate from World Resources Institute, India. Mr. Rishabh Jain, Fellow, Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Can we have the applause louder, please? Thank you. Mr. Vinayak Valimbe, Managing Director, Customized Energy Solutions, India. Dr. Amit Kumar Singh Parihar, Director, Clean Power Program, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation. Dr. Swati Singh, Head of Regional Standards for Southeast Asia, UL Standards. Dr. Rashi Gupta, Founder and Managing Director, Vision Mechatronics. So we have a very illustrious and a huge panel, and I realize the challenge of that. But what is very also important is to understand what does this room think, as well as what does these panelists think. So before I turn to the heart of the session, the panel discussion, I would begin with checking the pulse of this room. So I would like to request everyone to please take out their mobile phones for a small poll that we're going to have. So please, this is a Mentimeter poll. Please scan this QR code, and I will also request our panelists to do that as well. Okay, wonderful. I really like how this room is feeling. Very energetic. I'm curious and excited. Okay. So, so everyone is curious about what is happening in the sector of recycling and circularity. And that is emerging to be a key theme today. In fact, I am very excited about your curiosity, and I hope we'll be able to answer some of these questions through this session. But before, we're also curious to know that what do you think about circularity before our learned panelists explain what are their opinions. So I would request you all to answer this question as well. So can you please go to the question? Yes. You can only choose one. So we have divided this panel discussion into three segments. So let me give you a bit brief. So the first section is about circularity. So circularity asks a very foundational question, which is, are we designing solar systems for recovery or only for deployment? So we would want to understand from you that at what stage, according to you, the circularity should be embedded in solar and battery systems. So we know there are more than 51 people in this room, and we would like to hear the pulse of the room. And 28 people have answered now. Can we see the results for this? Wonderful. So most people, yes, so most people think that it should be across the entire life cycle. And this is very encouraging because the room clearly recognizes that circularity is not an end of life issue, it is a system design principle. And with this, I will move to the first segment, and my question would be to Ms. Chandra. Um, can, okay. So, Ms. Chandra, India is rapidly scaling solar and storage deployment. So we would like to understand from you, how can life cycle governance be embedded at the design and procurement stage so circularity becomes foundational to energy policy rather than an afterthought?
I think you made me answering this question very easy by contextualizing it in the quiz before. So, as we know that we sit over 140 plus gigawatt of solar deployment in India today, and most of the first generation deployment happened via imports, right? So we did not have the principles of traceability, we did not have a control over the manufacturing, we did not have control over like how do we design circularity and embed that in our processes. And therefore, today, as we move towards a more domestic content requirement in the deployment and diffusion of solar, we sit on an opportunity where we design circularity at various stages. So we design circularity in the entire life cycle approach. We have manufacturing mandates where, see, the challenge first was how do we wean our import dependence to, some bit of a capacity that will come in India. And now we can boast of almost, 170 gigawatts of module manufacturing capacity and around 30 gigawatts of cell manufacturing capacity. So that kind of gives, the vandal doesn't have the handle anymore. So once we have the handles, we really can, embed that circularity at the design stage. What we have to go in future towards is like in our procurement processes and in our operational phase also, how do we embed that? And that embedding will happen once we have the standardization and we have the standardization mandate, and that harmonization happens and that has a buy-in globally. So that is what will unlock the entire life cycle approach for the solar. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing this, ma'am. And huge apologies. Firstly, we have another panelist here amongst us. That is Dr. Sushil Kumar, Chief Scientist and Professor, CSIR, National Physical Laboratories. So please put a huge round of applause for him. So please join us. And apologies for that. Yeah, that's fine. I'll just be here and. So please. Yeah. You can just put it here. Yeah. I'm very used to doing panel discussions like this. So, thank you, ma'am, for your response. And I think, yes, India is taking a huge step in moving with such a great speed in terms of module manufacturing and cell manufacturing, but also we are coming up with great guidelines for battery mandate and even the concept of Aadhaar passport as well. So we are moving in the right direction, and I think every one of us will agree with that. So my next question is to Dr. Praveen Kumar. So how do we move from fragmented end-of-life frameworks to an integrated circular solar battery ecosystem? Because as I just mentioned, India is moving towards Aadhaar battery passports as well. So in your experience, what are your thoughts in moving from fragmented frameworks to an integrated circular approach?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. And I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to participate in this important discussion. And as we saw in the initial questionnaires, that circularity, you need to think at the entire life cycle of the clean technologies. And if we see globally that due to the push towards the clean technology and different countries, they are coming up with the target for the carbon neutrality, they are talking about the net zeros. And this is pushing the deployment of solar and energy storage in different regions. And what is happening there, that the supply chain issues and the end of life management and concern related to that is highlighting the importance of circularity in all clean technology, whether it's solar or energy storage. And if we see the globally what is happening, that there are a set of countries who are doing well on the policy regulation standards, but there are countries who are pushing for the clean technology, but they lack a clear policy regulation and standards. And there is a recent research published in the Nature, and that highlights that due to the technological advancement, what is happening in those countries having a strong manufacturing base, we are seeing a yearly retirement of the solar PVs, and as these solar panels are having not much value in those countries, these are moving towards the other developing economies where we don't have a clear policy, regulation and standards or guideline to manage this. So actually what is happening, that this is going somewhere and the responsibility for the end of life management is shifting to the region where we don't have a clear policy guideline or standards, and that creates a very unique challenge. And this highlights to take a three important actions. One is that we need a clear governance framework for the exporter, importers, and the international institutions, so that we are able to manage these clean technology, whether it's going from one region to another region, and we are ensuring a proper management of this at the end of life. Because the solar PVs are going for second life application. Similarly, in the batteries coming out from the electric vehicles, they still have a remaining life in that can be used in the energy storage. But this highlights another next important action, that we need to build a transparent and interoperable data collection, management and sharing mechanism across the different countries. And currently we have the two examples, like European Union is having a battery passport. They have come up with the regulation and lot of guidelines. And another discussion is emerging in India, and we are calling that as a battery Aadhaar. As one solution will not fit for all, but these two can be the guiding document, or this can give a direction to develop something which is acceptable to the different countries and help in navigating the discussion in across the different countries. And the third one, as we saw, that we need to start thinking about circularity since beginning. If we are designing the solar panels, or if we are manufacturing the battery packs, we need to integrate, but not at the cost of safety and performance. So I think governance structure we need to develop. The second, data transparent and interoperable data system we need, and the circularity thinking should be integrated at the manufacturing stage itself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Praveen. And these are very in alignment with what we are trying to do at Sunrise. We are trying to develop, with the help of countries, governance structures. We are also, through our battery recycling guidelines, that we are going to also do soft launch today, work towards transparency and interoperability through Aadhaar-based battery systems. And lastly, we are a huge proponent of design for circularity. So thank you for highlighting all these pertinent points as well. And some of your points also lead us to the next question, which are harmonized standards and how we want to look into that domain. So I would move to Dr. Swati. So for the next question. So Dr. Swati, what common guidelines and harmonized standards are currently missing across manufacturing deployment and end of life? And how can we internationally do an alignment across member countries so that we can take into account all the 3 points that have been mentioned by Dr. Praveen?
Yeah, thank you, Gurleen, and I would like to commend all the three institutions for a great work, and it's a right time to talk about this particular topic. When it comes to the solar economy, I feel it's not a technology race anymore now. It has gone to the trade architecture. And the supply chain management and the end life management is also important. Now, when it comes to the standard side, uh, we have a frameworks, we have a guidelines on the circularity, but when it comes to the measurement and the impact assessment of that is actually lacking. So in that case, in this, from the US standards and engagement, we have developed a standard called 3600, which do talk about the circularity. Now, I'm very happy to see three words: circularity, resilience, and responsibility. So here, circularity is, we are going to measure it. We have a metrics, and that metrics is for the material flows, and it is also related to the impact assessment of the material flows. And across the supply chain it is. So this is 3600, which is across for any particular product that we can look at it from the product level, site level, or or at an institution level. So this is at large we are looking at from the company. So in that case, the company, if they would like to measure any sustainability, that will become easier to check it through the standard called 3600. Now we have another one which is specific for the PV modules and for the wind turbines and for the energy storage systems and the micro mobility and for the EV charging infrastructure also. That is called 3602. And that also talks about the horizontal requirements for the materials, which do talk about the material evaluation, your supply chain from where you are taking it, the usefulness of that packaging, the designing processes, until the end of the life management. So 3602 specifically is on the electrification side, and that is going to bridge the gaps when we look at the standards. So I feel that we are doing a lot of aspects. It's only that we need to go and understand that at every particular stage, the global harmonization becomes important. And India, I think we are already progressing to that race. It's just that we need one more step to take it more proactively, that step, and put it together in totality. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swati. Uh, Through the first segment, we have talked about design, traceability, and standards. But as we discussed in the beginning, that circularity is not only about system design, it is also about system strength. So if we fail to recover materials, align standards, and create viable reuse pathways, we do not just fail to create waste, we create vulnerability. Which brings us to the second pillar that we're going to talk today, which is about resilience. So, resilience is in our title because solar growth story increasingly depends on critical minerals, global supply chains, and long-lived assets, as mentioned by our previous speakers. So, without life cycle planning, dependence becomes exposure. So, now I would like to open the floor to audience to please poll their answers for our next question. So please take your phones out and so those of us who have joined now, please log into menti.com and use the code 14123105 to answer this question. Yes, please key in your answers quickly. So, seems like the room feels that there should be stronger standards and certifications. And they are very in alignment with what our previous speakers also mentioned. So with this, we move to the segment of resilience, as I mentioned earlier. And my next question would be to Dr. Sushil. You've heard the audience. We need to have standards, but we also need to understand what are the technical gaps as well. So from both scientific and standards point of view, we would like to understand from you what are the most critical aspects to improve recovery rates of high value materials such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, to close the material security gap that we are facing right now.
Yeah, thank you, Gulli. As for the question, what you imposed to me, see, whether it is a solar or the battery, normally in the beginning we talk for durability of it, means stronger and stronger, so that it can have a more and more life. Like for the solar panel, warranty given by the manufacturer 25 years and just start manufacturer for 30. So that is the end of life given by the manufacturer. No standard 25-year or 30-year. Standard doesn't say any life for any panel. It's a power given by the panel, 80% of this. This is how it is definition is, and normally more or less it is accepted globally. Okay, when the panel losing its power less than 80%, we are considering as a end of life. Similarly, for battery is also the more or less the same thing. Yes, it is not enough to for the load, but we want to have the power from that. Now, point is that we should have the first. I will talk about the standard, then what the research gap or the scientific thing is needed. So, as such, if you have a solar park or stand of a batteries, it is not that all go in a one go. So that we can choose these all are in the end of life category. So it means we should have a proper protocol or the standard how we can define it, if it is giving 80% or more or lower than that, in which bracket 70 to 80 or 82, means we have a outstanding panels or battery excellent different categories we need, so that we can give a life to it, second life. And for the second life, safety of the customer is very important. It is not that we just with only seeing the power we can give it to the customer. So safety aspect is very important apart from other parameters which is needed for the second life. Second life normally it is going for the normal secondary uses. It's not for the big powerhouses, whether it's the panel or storage capacity. So standard is needed. I assume that BIS is working for it. I know that some work is already initiated, and globally also discussion is going on for the second life of module. But definitely whatever the existing standards are there for the battery and the panel, we need to look into it so that we can assign a particular standard in that for the second life of panel. As for the research gap, if I see the recovery rate, your question is there. So definitely it is all depends on it model. Basically, then only recycling to choose it. And in the laboratory, the researchers do a research as the maximum. Basically, is all how pure material we can extract out of it. That's the main aim first. For any researcher, we go for extraction or the recovery of a material. The researchers see its purity. So purity as for the application, whether it is going to the field. Like for solar, few years back, 6 and 5N was good enough for making of a solar panel, but now industry demands 9 or 10N. So that's a big difference, because we know that from 6N to 10N going is a lot of purification processes needed. We need adequate infrastructure. Research definitely there. So research, normally whatever in the past 1 decade, the solar industry has seen from starting from BSF to PERC to TOPCon or back surface, even HJG, is all research mainly happened in the industry. It's not in the small research lab. So basically it's all business driven. So competition was so, demand was so, and mass production was so. So all those things driven in the industry to have that research. So this is what. So gap, it is not fulfilled only by the researchers in a different national institution or IITs or national labs. It is also in the industry needs to see this thing. And the purity, like you mentioned, the cobalt and other elements, nickel, cobalt, or magnesium, lithium, all is there. So definitely its purity is needed. Then only it will fit into the fabrication of new batteries. And also the cost one has to see. Otherwise, always preference will be go from the earth crust recovery of it if it's available. It's all balancing of all those things. So proper infrastructure in the country needed, funding is needed, so that can proper research can be performed. This is what, as for your question, what I feel. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank
I
you
think
so much for sharing, Dr. Sushil. And I think some of the points that you mentioned here, like cost and how all this industry is profit driven and also is led by industry intervention, I would like to move to understanding the market perspective of the similar industry from Mr. Vinayak next. So, Mr. Vinayak, according to you, what conditions are necessary to make recycling and material recovery economically viable and bankable at scale?
Thanks. Thanks for the invitation and happy to be here. So when we say bankability, essentially we are really talking about non-recourse financing, typically called as a project finance. There are a lot of recyclers or relatively small companies, so balance sheet financing is still not there. So they are primarily non-recourse financing. Like most of the battery supply chain, recycling has similar challenge that it is OPEX heavy. So if you think of a numbers little bit, so for let's say 1 KTPA plant, 1000 tons plant, which doesn't really have much economies of scale, to be something about $3 million, give or take 25 CR. The OPEX of that would be for LFP would be close to 20 plus CR, for NMC something 30-35 CR. So OPEX is quite significant, although CAPEX seems high. So for scalable plant of 10 KTPA, we're talking about CAPEX less than 200 CR, and OPEX between LFP and NMC would be 230 to 300.
Mr. Vinay, can you please explain the full forms of LFP and NFP for our
Oh, yes, sorry.
audience? Yeah.
Yeah, so there are primary two battery technologies that are popular. LFP is primarily gets used in the stationary storage, which is lithium iron phosphate. It's out of different lithium battery chemistries is considered safest because of the lowest thermal runaway. And they have been used in others like in rickshaws and others as well. And NMC is nickel, manganese, cobalt. These are the materials that go into that. It's a higher energy density, so are primarily used in electric mobility, like two-wheelers or four-wheelers. Thank you for that. So when we are talking about recycling, these are the primary two technologies, and there are other ones that are there as well, that we use in the phone batteries and others. But these are the kind of numbers. So coming back to the original question, so these are OPEX heavy industries. So what that means from bankability perspective, it has very high working capital needs. So the not only just the revenue, but the surety of revenue or the certainty of revenue is important, and that's where having something where there is a identified demand or policies such as EPR, where there is a floor price set, which is keeping the minimum revenue needed for the financing, as well as looking at the longer term demand, will be most helpful. And then there are other aspects like GST and the plant utilization that actually makes significant impact on the economics. So how we can rationalize GST so that it's not burdening the capex, as well as looking at other policies where we are creating the surety of revenue. That really goes a long way from bankability perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Vinayak, for sharing a very detailed aspects on how we should look at designing different plants or around these manufacturing of batteries. And I think it is very important, as it has also been discussed in this discussion, that business is something that is going to drive this industry, this market. So it is very important to understand key aspects that will move this entire industry in the positive direction, so that we can have recycling at scale, and it should be economically viable as well. So here I would move from bankability to understand how to create the ecosystem or move in that direction. So my next question would be to Rishabh. So, Mr. Jain, where are the most critical policy and economic instrument gaps today? And how should countries actually deploy the policies that have been mentioned in the previous questions, like EPR, fiscal incentives, and other market instruments without slowing the solar deployment?
Right. So I can go on this for a very long time because
I will restrict it to 5 minutes, please.
yes. So of course the market itself is very very nascent, right? What we are seeing right now is it's a lot of afterthought, and right now we are trying to fix a broken system. So first we can try to see what is that we need immediately to be done, at least in the solar or on batteries, and then we can of course think on long term. So at least in the short term, EPR, instruments like EPR that already exist may need certain revisiting for solar modules to go ahead, and then of course maybe for batteries and other technologies. Now the purpose of EPR, one, it makes it commercially viable, of course, is if designed in the right way with the right prices. It can make the recovery commercially viable for companies, which can encourage new entrants, which can then move the sector from informal to formal. So just one particular, I would say, policy instrument which already exists, but revisiting in a new scenario on solar, and maybe just adding there are certain metals or minerals which are currently not allowed under solar. So just adding and then maybe on regular basis updating. So this is one that already exists. The second I would say is a lot on the transparency itself. Now, it's not a quick fix, but it's easier than the other instruments. Currently, as a recycler, he or she may not necessarily know what are these, what is the composition of a particular product, what are the additives that would have gone, and sometimes even those who are assembling some of these products may not necessarily know, right? There are so many different hands that are changing. But if information is passed from one to another, there are examples like battery pass others which are being trying to be piloted. What it does is that then the recycler is able to segregate the batches and accordingly come up with certain ways in which they can recycle. Of course, it depends on them, but that information which already exists has to be passed on to some of the people. The third, I would say, is something that we tried as we work very closely with the Ministry of Mines. As part of the National Critical Minerals, we have kind of embedded, but is to say that what is the kind of information as a consumer can we have. Now, all of us use our mobile phones, but we don't know if there's any recycled content, if that product is even recyclable. We see on PET bottles, etc., that yes, recyclable, but I don't know if that is 100% recyclable, 20% recyclable, 80%, but a simple logo with some information will, maybe if I'm ready to pay that extra amount, I can make that choice. And these are again kind of voluntary standards itself. Yes, of course there are organizations like there can be standards and there can be validation itself, but I'm saying as a consumer nudge is very very important, and then of course people can take a call. Similarly, if there's, so Apple already uses I think all recycled cobalt in their batteries, but it's not necessarily marketed beyond of course their videos of ESG, but this is beyond ESG, and as a consumer if I'm very happy that okay this does not lead to more mining, and it has 10% recycled content, 30%. So these consumer nudges would be very important. Finally, I would say beyond awareness is one is on the consumer side, but also awareness of the people who have owned it for a long time. So developers, the EV owners, or the project developers for batteries or solar modules, they often think that because I have paid it, I will, whenever I give it to someone, I need to get whatever I can extract. Right, and one of the recent reports that we have launched, we realized the logistics cost and the expectation maybe sometimes from the developer that I'm giving a discarded module, I should get whatever few thousand rupees, etc. I think if that expectation reduces, they give it maybe in free, it just immediately becomes commercially viable itself. So I think beyond commercial, if they are also start thinking on responsibly, that would be good. So I'll just stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Rishabh. And I think your last point was very valid. And dear audience, I assure you, I didn't plan any of this because all the speakers are just moving to the next segue automatically. So he talked about responsibility, and our next segment is of responsibility. So we have established three things throughout the past two segments. One, we need better design, we need viable markets, we need technology readiness, and we also need market to move in that direction. But none of this functions without the last and the final pillar, which Rishabh talked about, accountability. So circularity designs system, resilience strengthens the system, but responsibility determines who's going to sustain the system. So let's move on to this final dimension and our final question. So who should carry primary responsibility for solar and battery end of life management? So there is a new code for this question. Please take your phones out. I think this is the only session where we are encouraging you to use your mobile phones. Yeah. So please take your phones out. And the Mentimeter code for this question is 66045072. If we have received 20 answers, once we have received 20 answers, we'll stop the poll. So the faster you do it,
shared responsibility makes it very difficult to answer anything else. And the question should not have been there. The option should not be politically correct.
I may have planted that one. Yeah. So can we have more answers, please? The Mentimeter code is 66045072. So no one wants governments to take the responsibility. Congratulations, Ms. Chandra. And okay, so now this seems like there's going to be almost a tie between shared responsibility and manufacturers. So we'll lean towards shared responsibility because growth without accountability creates future risk. So it has to be shared responsibility of everyone, be it manufacturers, developers, governments, recyclers, and also consumers, as was also mentioned in the last answer. So in terms of governance and policy structures and also how we can move in that direction, my next question is directed towards Dr. Amit. So how can philanthropic funding accelerate policy innovation and pilot circular battery ecosystem in developing countries? So we've talked about how we want to develop market, but how can we uh, overcome the initial impetus that is required to move into that sector?
Thanks a lot, Dr. Gulin. Let me start with a big thank you to ISA, Terry and CS team for giving me this great opportunity to learn. Most of the people in the room were curious about this. Honestly, I was feeling very happy because where we are not talking about accelerating renewables, we are talking about circularity. That's a good thing, and kudos for putting this together. I'm also grateful to MNRE and in particular for their visionary leadership, because normally you will find we are talking about accelerating renewable, but the right way of having renewables, creating economic empowerment of the communities, and therefore the whole discussion on domestic manufacturing, where we are talking about we are environmentally responsible. Thanks a lot for pushing this agenda around circularity. At a personal level also, sometimes I'm as Amit, we need to talk about circularity, otherwise itna lagega. Coming to this context, also although we are talking about solar PV and battery, uh, it's a function of three or four things. So, first of all, opportunity. And if I can talk about some of the numbers on the battery thing, different reports, more than 100,000 of jobs, 9 billion worth investment opportunity. And if we talk about some of the numbers, people are saying like more than 160 gigawatt hour of battery demand. So there is a clear opportunity. Then the question is need. There is a clear need, whether you're talking about energy security or you talk about your imports. Number have significantly gone up. I mean, 0.5 million in 2019, your import data, this has gone to somewhere close to 4 billion. So there is a clear need. Third thing is intent, clear intent. That's the reason we are here. Then comes something called reality. And that is where we are talking about 3% of the batteries getting recycled at a global level. And in India, somewhere 0.3%. So the question is, with all these good intents, somehow we have not been able to unlock the ecosystem. And that is where exactly philanthropy will come in. So how to kind of enable the ecosystem so that we can leverage these opportunities. And one other thing for philanthropy is to have this holistic approach. And what I mean by that is you get into different aspect of it. Do we have the opportunity, or what is the opportunity size around this? And that's where we get into some of the assessments. People were talking about the use of second life batteries. Clear case, at least whatever we have read so far, it can be used for stationary applications. We're talking about mini grid, microgrids. I'm thinking, why only mini grid, microgrid? I mean, we're talking about decentralized generation. Can we think of these batteries being used for providing the storage so that we are making these villages independent? We are ensuring 24/7 electricity, and then the whole story around the economic empowerment can go on. Challenges related to data is what we need to do. Do we have the technology to recycle? And he did mention about some of the technological aspect. We need to have that as well. Fourth is, even if you have a technology, do we have a financing business models so that someone is willing to put in their money? That is something we will have to do. Even if we are able to take care of that, do we have the institutional capacity to operationalize this? And therefore, we will have to work on the institutional aspect around this. And obviously, policy and regulations, we need that. So the idea is we need to have this holistic picture. We need to basically work around some of these things so that we are making the ecosystem conducive for capital, basically the public capital to kind of flow. And once we are able to do that, then the next step is basically go for the private investment to kind of come in. So that's where I feel this role of philanthropy, a catalytic role around this. And that's where we have also been kind of making some of our efforts around this. Probably I'll talk in the second round, but some of the interventions, whether it is policy at a state level or some sort of alliance collaborations, because the scale at which we are aiming to kind of have these things, collaboration is a must, and that's where I think we should move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Amit. And I think, given the holistic perspective you have presented, it exactly aligns with what the audience has just shown the interest, that why it is a shared responsibility of everyone to work in this area. So, we've talked about responsibility in the solar era, and several of our panelists have also talked about reusing batteries, repowering batteries, and repurposing batteries for second life applications. And my next question would be to Dr. Rashi, because she's worked in that area very closely. So, Dr. Rashi, second life batteries are often positioned as solutions before recycling. But from an industry perspective, who would carry the responsibility for safety, performance, and liability once a battery is repurposed?
Well, first of all, Gurleen, thank you for inviting me to the session, ISA, Terry, and CES. You have asked a very nice question because when I was hearing each one of us here at the panel, one thing that I was discussing with Sumanji sneakily was that it's not about just standardization. It's about implementation of these standardizations which is missing in our country. It is implementation of these policies that are missing in the countries. It is about bridging the gap between what is existent and what we are deploying in the country. So today, if you ask me this question and what I saw from the poll, I was the first one to write happy. We're seeing everybody curious and excited, and then my fellow panelists here was also happy, so I'm very happy about it. The challenge what we are today facing is that when you said who is responsible and who is liable, so when we have a shared responsibility, having a very clear demarcation of the responsibility and liability becomes a big challenge. Given today's scenario of whatever is available with us in terms of standardization, in terms of policy regulation, it's the manufacturer who is liable and responsible. Given today's EPR regulations, okay. Now when I come to safety, the second challenge that we have is that even though UL, BIS, IEC, everyone will write our standards. Do we have enough test labs? My next question is to everyone, do we have enough test labs? Well, I'm supposed to answer, but I'll still ask questions. So the challenge is we are falling short of test labs, not just for first life right now. So second life is a very far-sighted thing. Still in that case, what we as industry is doing, I mean, when I launched the Second Life batteries in collaboration with JSW MG Motors, what I realized was that it is so challenging to have a standard in place, though I'm also a part of BIS where I contribute to standards along with my co-panelists and Isha sitting there in the audience. The challenge is even though we write a standard, consensus to the standard and testing facility to adhere to that standard. So once you have these ecosystem in place, not just in India, but all developing countries as well, where ISA, they are the ISA members, we have to streamline those positions first. Then when you talk of safety, the attitude is to have safety. It's not about making safe standards. It's about attitude that we want to have safety. I mean, I'll tell you, I just have one single example to give you. We talk of so many standards, we talk of so many insurances, okay? I would say each one of us would at least have one insurance policy for the people sitting in this room. How much do you value your life is the question. We say that lithium is, yesterday there was a fire in an EV. Yesterday there was EV fire where there were high tension cables going above the test vehicles and there was a massive fire. Okay, and that was, I witnessed that fire because it was very close to my office where I was just traveling around that time, so I saw it. So the challenge is, and it's a very reputed manufacturer, they have done all their safety tests and everything, yet it caught fire, right? So the attitude of safety is something to be imbibed in everyone, if not just the manufacturer but also the user. We tend to go overboard with everything that we have. And we do that with batteries also. And we know that very well for sure. So that attitude of safety has to be imbibed, not just having safety standards or test lab or holding liability to the manufacturer, but also to the user to use it with a safe practice. So, educating and telling these users also how to actually use these batteries is also very important. Now with the second life, another challenge that comes is of the data that was also spoken before. We know that data is missing, but that doesn't mean, okay, if the history is missing, the present still can be there. Even if history is missing, no problem. But you have, as a manufacturer, conditioned it for a second life. You can still have a cell level data available with you to see how it is performing in this life now, in the second version of what it is doing. And that's what we did. We did when we have already deployed a couple of them in the country. And we could extract more than about 70% from the first life to go to the second life. And with the product called Relive, we really realized that, having a cell level granularity coming in the second life actually helps you to identify that how safe it is, when there could be a challenge coming in the performance and life as well as safety. So these kind of technology is very well available. We need to have an attitude of safety and circularity right from the design. Like many in the first question also everybody said, it's like at all stages. So you have to start from design. Today the batteries are not designed for circularity, and that is where we have to start with, and then we will have the full circle complete to actually have something which is sustainable, robust, affordable, accessible to everybody throughout, not just one nation or one country. And also you, as I'm specifically mentioning this for ISA because you have an access to all the countries together. You have to look in at a cross-border trade, which is currently not available. I mean, the chunk is available just of for the second life or recycled, repurposed battery in one country. The actual application availability and affordability is in another country. So if you could look at cross-border trade, this would actually fuel the circularity in a very, very fast manner. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, because we know about Vienna Convention about cross-border trade rules, and I think maybe we need to also further look into that and further redefine how we have to look at the end of life for not only PVs, critical minerals, e-waste, but also batteries and other new innovations that are also coming in the market. So in the interest of time, I will have to close this panel discussion. But before doing that, I would request each speaker to share one single most important action that we as ISA must take in next 3 years to ensure solar scales circularly, resiliently, and responsibility. We can start it from Rishabh.
Thank you. Quickly, so while the manufacturing remains concentrated, of course, recycling will be distributed. I mean, the deployment is distributed across the world despite being concentrated. And yes, so I would say we need to focus or maybe support the countries in developing the capability to do the first processing at site or close by. And then, of course, the advanced processing can happen later.
So basically, localized ecosystem. Okay. Yes.
We need we need to have a battery data management system, and we should avoid over regulation that can create or emerge as a barrier in scaling in other countries.
Thank you.
So from the import dependence towards self-reliance towards the export-led in the solar, we need common language and the standards in terms of technical regulation and standards. So global harmonization that I'm looking at it.
Great.
I'll stay with the battery. I would say ISA can probably create some kind of a regional hub and spoke model so that the cross-border trade that Ashu was mentioning is feasible. And that 43% or some share on the solar that you mentioned, you would create something close to that for batteries and give the world China plus one alternative.
Thank you.
Yeah, so taking from the high aim, I think we need to mainstream the circularity and the resilient supply chain into the national security argument. And while we do that, we also have to ramp up our capabilities for processing and second life use and all the kind of circularity loop that we are trying to close in.
Thank you.
So I feel it's collaboration with clear complementarity and convergence in the overall approach. We have some initial success in the form of Battery 360, but that can be certainly expanded to global south countries. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, what we need, as such, we need lot. It's very true, because we are just in the beginning of it. That's what my thought is. But actually, at the ground level, we need to work. More we talked, but circularity, as in the beginning also I mentioned, the product durability versus recyclability is always a trade-off space.
Yeah.
So that's the important. And in the circularity, definitely the recovery of purest after pure material is important. It's not just chalta, won't work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would say, Gurleen, what we need today is a centralized approach to a decentralized implementation with localization and skill development to actually achieve a complete circular system.
So you mentioned everything that ISA does. So you're on the right track. Thank you.
Yeah, you want to add something? Yes. We are talking about the. Identifying yourself. Yeah, my name is Giri Sethi. I'm the compliance regulations. My passion is on that. The policy regulations. The GST on the scrap, the battery scrap, is 18%. That is very important to understand. Industry is fighting to 5%. If I go to battery swapping now, the battery swapping is GST is 18%. If the battery is coming with the vehicle, it is 5%. Okay, that need to understand.
Okay.
Now the 90%, we are talking about the recycling. I hope everything is aware of. The 90% of recycling is the under the informal, unorganized sector. And we are talking about the safety environment. These people, the unskilled people, they don't know what is the critical materials in that, the battery, and how to handle this battery. That is very important. Now we are talking about the localization, and we are dependency. You mentioned about the dependency on the China. Lithium battery is imported from the China, and everyone knows the import of battery of low standard is coming from China, which has a very few end of life. And the government BS standard will be applicable on imports from March 2026, and I doubt it will be maintained or maybe further extended. I request to the industry, they should do R&D only on the sodium ion battery localization. Rather than depending on the lithium batteries, we should work on the sodium ion batteries. Now the circularity and traceability, of the battery. Who will maintain the data? The QR is there. Who will maintain the data? How many batteries are in circulation? How many batteries are being wasted or came for recycling through EPR or through the unorganized sector? That who will maintain the data? That is very important. The QR is there. The policy is there. The procedure is not there. Who will maintain the data? That is very important for me. Now we are talking about the recycling. We need to educate the industry or the consumer how to maintain this battery to extend the end of life battery. In industry, if you control the wastage, it means the profit is there. So how to maintain the battery means to extend the end of life the battery. That is very important. Thank you.
Can I add something to what he said? No, Pele sir, you go first.
I'm just giving back the mic.
Okay.
I'll have my time to speak.
Okay. Yeah. So two things I wanted to add on to what you said. One is that R&D, and we obviously have missed it in the panel. So there is very little R&D that happens, and very few industries take initiative to do that R&D. Second thing is what you rightly said is who is the owner of the data. Now this is a big challenge that we all are facing to come to a consensus. Even when I sit on the standardization committees, the challenge is nobody is willing to share the existing data that they have. And second is, where do I plant my new data that is coming? So obviously I have the data, but who do I share it to, and why do I share it to, and what is the benefit of sharing it? So the procedure, and this is something that Battery 360 would also look into, and I'm also a part of Battery 360 as well. So I'll give it to you. So that is something there. Now in R&D, what happens is, we have to do two parts of this. You have to understand that the cell chemistry is one aspect of R&D, and the electronics, whereas the BMS, the IoTs, the EMS is the second half of the sensors, or the second half of the R&D. Now India is very capable of the second half of the R&D. We are okay, or we're still moving ahead with the first part of R&D. So we should leverage that, and that is what we did, leveraging it right from the beginning, that yes, we have indigenized EMS, we have indigenized BMS, we could even indigenize PCS for that matter when it comes to a full battery ecosystem. But the challenge is that we do not have economies of scale for an Indian product, but yes, for a Chinese product. Somewhere that parity has to come. And I completely agree with what you've said.
I just want to add one more point. Allow me. One of the minister, the critical minutes, there was a conference on that. He mentioned each and every house they have 4 to 5 mobiles in their at their home, and dead phone. They are keeping for no reason. Where to go, where to surrender, where to that. That is very important. First, one more question you should be mentioned on that. Everyone has a car, everyone has a bike, everyone has a battery in that. Okay, if end of life is there, where to contact? Any customer care is there? Are they aware of where to contact? So QR code is there, traceability is there. If I want to dispose of the battery, where should I contact? EPR? Anyone knows about the EPR? No. They even might not be aware what is the EPR. The EPR also. Thank you.
Just, Gurleen,
I think in the interest of
just one.
yes.
Just to answer your question, like what kind of data should be collected, static, dynamic, where it should be stored, how it should be managed, processed, shared. So under Battery 360 Alliance, there is a working group working on this to understand the use cases of this battery data. Like when we are talking about the battery data, that where the value will come, because you need a sustainable model for this. You can't have the white elephant roaming with this, so this will be not sustainable. So there is a discussion going on where industry is participating and coming up with the solution or idea that how we should be developing the battery Aadhaar for the India. Similarly, we have one working group for the second life that Terry is leading, and the third working group will be going to launch on the standards that UL is going to launch on 27th. So I will request that please participate in those discussions so that awareness is there what's going on in the ecosystem. No, it's open.
Hello.
So I just didn't want the room to go back disenchanted. So I just wanted to contextualize what do we have in place and what do we need to build further. So in terms of the incentives and in terms of the carrot that the Sarkar has offered to all of you, you have the ACC battery PLI, you have the high efficiency solar module PLI which is in place, which is allowing an opportunity to embed at the circularity at the design level. So that opportunity is available to us. We have stellar standards and regulatory framework. We have elite, expertise available in-house. India is a huge knowledge economy. So we have that power available to us, which we have to scale up going further. In terms of what is not working, Rishabh very nicely articulated that we have an EPR which needs a rehash and we are working towards it, right? And you have e-waste management rules where solar PV module waste sits under it. We need to rework that. We are in the process of doing it. For example, we had an industry consultation where we found out that if you just move the solar waste from the hazardous category itself, the transportation cost comes down by 60%. So all these things are work in progress. So please do not go out disenchanted. There's a lot of work happening and all of your hands need to be on the deck for more work to happen. Yeah.
Or you are closing? Just one. Good afternoon, I'm Bhaskar. I'm a developer in solar. I'm from Guwahati, Assam. I have been there as a developer, two things. One, just an experience and a question. One is, in 12 years, I have more than hundreds of PV modules which I have to left behind at my sites. It's broken somehow by my, if I bring it back, it costs me high. There's no way. Whether I, as a developer, what you mentioned, that as a developer should not expect anything. I don't expect, but I can incur another cost. No? So if I bring it to Guwahati, it is. Second is, nobody has mentioned about BES coming up. We as a developer is looking forward for BESs that will create a huge battery things. So anything that you would like to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, dear audience, and thank you to all the speakers and the panelists for their remarks today. And I would really encourage the audience to take these questions offline, because some of these panelists would still be here. And with that, I would like to thank everyone once again. And today's discussion, and sum up the discussion we had on the panel. So today's discussions made three things clear. Circularity begins at design. Several of the panelists highlighted this thing. Resilience must secure materials and markets, and we need to embed that in the national security argument. Responsibility must be structured, not assumed, and be owned by everyone. That is something that has also come out very strongly. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, the next frontier is not about installing more panels. It is about managing every watt across its entire lifetime. With that, thank you everyone. And a huge round of applause for the entire panel that we have here. Now I would like to request Director General ISA, International Solar Alliance, to please come on stage and share a token of gratitude to all our panelists. Thank you.
Be the least qualified in the panel to talk about recycling, because I heard about recycling only after I joined ISA. But one thing I got convinced is that it needs to be brought on center stage, because this is, and I'll tell you why. I used to go to small countries in Africa and even Bhutan and Sri Lanka, and the minister started asking me, how do we do recycling of solar PV and battery? And I must confess, my first reaction is, leave India and China to sort that out. This was my mind, that large ones who are really having a big ecosystem, they will resolve. And why are you thinking about now when you have not even started? But I realized that I was wrong. Because as this discussion showed, I figured out there are so many issues on the design and standards that need to be resolved when you start a solar project and not wait for the end of 20 years. So this is something which is also very important for bringing countries together. I would say that I heard when, especially in the last part when everybody was saying what are the top things, I broadly see in the ecosystem challenge that exists, ISA has a role for doing at least 3-4 things. First is harmonization of standards and data in terms of batteries. I think this part is something on which we need to do a lot more. I learned a lot today that there are some standards that exist and what can be done today about it. The second, and there's a lot of discussion on this, I would like this forum to continue a lot more on what kind of a business model makes sense. And I will be very honest, a lot of the panelists here have talked about a regional hub and spoke. I think maybe that's the right way, but a lot of different people have different interpretations of what a centralized versus decentralized mean. Some people tell me, I want to actually process this at the plant. Some people say, no, not possible, I want to do it. So this is something that the industry must evolve. We are very happy to look at what different business models exist. And one thing I feel is, I think India, while we have kind of not caught up yet on the manufacturing, we can actually be a leader on the recycling side. And that I think is a great opportunity for the ecosystem in India to look at how to help shape this agenda for the world. Because it's not only about then what India is doing, but what India is doing for the world. The third thing, which got listed on the sidelines, I would like for all of you to tell us what more needs to be done on the skills and institutional side. I think this is a very important element. What kind of skills are needed, both in terms of those who are actually going to process, but those who must know, right from consumers, mobiles, these are all very important things. Everyone needs to have some, and then what kind of institutional framework is really needed? What will be the role of the regulators at state, central, MNRE on the policy side? Those are very important questions. And just the last is on collaboration between countries. We have set up an advisory board, and I think India is also represented through Sumanji. I would really like all of you to stay engaged on what all we can do on the international side to take it forward. For us, the commitment is that we will create multiple forums through the year and an assembly when 140 countries come together to come at some concrete milestones, whether it is on standards, whether it is on business models, whether it's on financing. So please stay engaged. Thank you very much.
So, with one thing I'd like to add, the next trillion dollar opportunity is in the recycling, and we can have at least a few billionaires from the recycling industry from the country.
Absolutely. And I want to say one thing. I go to a lot of conferences. There are very few sessions that are detailed, that are specific, and that are passionate. So big round of applause to this panel for being there. So yeah, let's launch. So all of you, also we will at some point of time launch the website for Sunrise as well. Please stay engaged. Ecosystem doesn't get created by anyone in one particular. We are only conveners, but I think each stakeholder here has to play a very important role.
Thank you.
You give one to everyone?
Yes.
Then we can take a picture.
Yes. Before that, thank you very much, Mr. Khanna, for your kind remarks. And all of you would have Sunrise brochures with you, so please stay connected with us. And now, today we are going to do a soft launch of the battery recycling guidelines for ISA member countries that we have developed. So following this, I think I'm loud enough. Yeah. So, is it working? Yes. So we are going to launch the soft launch the battery recycling guidelines that ISA has developed for our member countries with support from CES, their great team and ours as well. So huge round of applause for all the partners that came together. And following the soft launch, there will be a presentation by the team as well. So please be seated for that. Thank you.